Hello.
We're lucky enough to have Peter here. He's touring different parts of the world at the moment, DJing. He's just been over in New Zealand and Brazil and Uruguay. And he's here in Melbourne as well for a show or two. And of course, he needs not really much of an introduction. You know, he and his equally famous colleagues, you know, a phenomena of global music coming out of Manchester in the mid-70s, Joy Division, trends morphing into New Order somewhere along the line, and involved in many other projects as well as producer and musician, the bass stylist, all of those things. And it's really good to have you here, Peter. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of things to discuss.
Weird, couch is great, it means you can fall asleep.
Yeah. I mean, this being in a position like this, addressing a group of people about your music is probably not the kind of thing that you were imagining all those years ago when you were just getting into music.
No, I mean, we were talking earlier that when I began in 1977, if you'd have gone along to somebody and said you wanted to learn music, then they would have thought you were an idiot. I think it's quite interesting these days, and I'm not too sure as a self-taught musician whether I could say it was good or bad. I don't think I'm expert enough to say that, but because I came up the other way. I came the backstairs route of learning to play music and being in a group. So it seems quite odd to me that people teach people how to be in groups. So it's quite strange. So maybe some of you can enlighten me as to whether it works or not.
It seems like you just picked up an instrument at a certain point. You were inspired by a certain performance or by what came to be known later as punk.
Yeah, I'd never been interested in music apart from listening to records and stuff like that. I'd never played a musical instrument apart from the recorder at school, and I went to see the Sex Pistols at the Lesser Free Trade Hall in Manchester in June of 1976. And I went out and bought a bass guitar the next day. And don't ask me why I did that, because I don't know, because I'd never even considered. I think the thing is that when I saw the Sex Pistols, which was sort of at the end of my teenage years, obviously 20, I didn't have a clue what the fuck I was going to do for the rest of my life. And it was like I saw the answer. Why? Just saw the Sex Pistols spit at people on stage, and I thought, I want to do that. I want to be able to spit at people on stage. As long as they don't spit at me, you've got to get it right. You can spit at them, but they can't spit at you. And I thought, right, well, to be in a group, you obviously need an instrument. So I went out and paid £35 for a bass guitar because my mate, Bernard, had a guitar, and you're not allowed to have two guitars in a punk group, or you weren't then. And that was it. We were a group. And then we thought, shit, we've got no music. Sort of one little oversight. So we started writing music. And that was it, and I've been doing that for 30 years. So, there you go.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you picked up a bass, you weren't necessarily drawn to it, you were kind of more following that. It's like within that punk idea, there's a lot of freedom, but there are a couple of rules about, I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's certain kinds of music, a certain approach to music is kind of set out by the punk idea.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of broke that quite soon, really, because the first music we wrote was obviously punky, as in the fact that you couldn't play. I think that it was quite soon that your taste sort of refined. I mean, my musical taste, as in the people I was listening to, I suppose you'd have to say was quite refined. I mean, I liked The Doors, you know, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, all your heavy metal stuff that was big. But so I suppose you were listening to a lot of different slow and fast music, whereas in punk it was all one pace, like that, you see. And we soon got bored with that. We just didn't. That didn't get us. I mean, I know that bands still play like that today, but it didn't get us. So we sort of moved off musically quite quickly. I mean, the rules of punk, which I think I still sort of hold dear, is that you don't necessarily do what people say, and you know, the great thing about forming a group, I found, was that you could tell everyone to fuck off because you were in a group, and somehow you got away with it because you were in a group. You went to television studios, you were drunk, you were obnoxious, you just did what you wanted, you fell over, you spewed up, and I was in a group. It was great. I mean, it's quite interesting now when you see things like Pop Idol and all this sort of reality thing, because groups have to be completely different. You know, they have to be nice to people. And the way that I was brought up was independently. We had an independent record label, which means we didn't really have anybody telling us what to do. The only drawback from that was that no one would lend you any money. As we all know in this world, money is very important in learning, I suppose. And the thing is that we were always self-financed as a group on every concert we did, every tour we did, and every record we did, which hasn't changed. So nobody funded us, so nobody owned or told Joy Division or New Order what to do, which was a very, very lucky position to be in. And, you know, I suppose that sort of made me whatever it is I am now.
I mean, yeah, so I think that's what I was getting at. It's like taking that idea of being able to do what you want with your music, not being limited to a certain kind of instrumentation. You started to, early on, to utilise a whole bunch of things, electronic instruments.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the thing that you'd have to admit is that obviously you had a talent. You know, I mean, you know, I've met a lot of people that have, even though they've been great people, have not really had a talent, and talent comes from no one knows where, does it? Talent comes from God, if you like.
It seems like at that point, talent was coming from Manchester.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've been very lucky. In that I live in Manchester. I don't know why so many great groups come out of Manchester. I wish I did, you know. But I mean, when I think that my friends are, you know, the Stone Roses, the Happy Mondays, the Charlatans, Buzzcocks, Christ, you know, even down to that gingerhead twat McHucknall, you know, there's still a lot of people that, you know, have done something in music. In Spiral Carpets, God, you know, the list is endless of people that came from Manchester. So.
And I mean, you know, you don't have a theory about the culture of Manchester, what might lead to this?
Well, Bernard always, his thing was that it was so fucking awful that everybody would always want to get out of it, and so that you form a group to get out of it, which I suppose is just as good a reason as any, really. I mean, I still live in Manchester. You know, it's still very important to me, and ironically, it's still as important musically, I think. You know, Smiths, don't forget the Smiths. You know, now, Badly Drawn Boy, I Am, Clue, Elbow, Dubs. Still a lot of groups come from Manchester, you know. We kick Liverpool's ass, man. It's fucking great.
So, the early days with an independent label, kind of the freedom that offered, but also obviously the restriction of not having any funding or having to be self-funded. How did that sort of structure, loose business structure, deal with?
Oh yeah, we had a very loose business structure.
How did it deal with the popularity of?
Well, I mean, business-wise is obviously now that knocking 51. I'm quite good at business, but I did learn the hard way, and we got ripped off, and you know, loads and loads of times. I mean, it was quite interesting signing Red Bull's contract before, because it had a clause at the end that said me I agreed that it was a reasonable and fair contract, which was quite interesting. So I crossed it off because I didn't think it was a reasonable and fair contract, but I still signed it. So, I mean, you know, you spend your life going through things like that. I was very lucky in that I got to the ripe old age of 40 before I signed a contract. The only contract we had was when we signed to London Records in 1996 or something. So before that, I'd never had to sign a contract because we were punks and we didn't sign contracts. So it was quite interesting. So business-wise, you do get taken advantage of, but the thing is that, you know, as my mother used to say, you'll see the back of them are, Peter. And very luckily, I have. The thing about doing it independently and being free was that things could happen very quickly. Right, I remember writing, say, Love Will Tear Us Apart in an afternoon with Ian, and he went away and did the lyrics, and then we came back and we didn't even have a tape machine in those days, so for the record company to hear it, they had to come and hear us perform it, which was quite interesting, because it's quite interesting when you think that an LP like Unknown Pleasures, because we were poor, it only existed in our heads. It didn't exist anywhere on tape because we were too poor to record it. We didn't have anything to record it on. So the only time it existed was when we played it together, which was quite a startling concept when you think how much you take for granted being able to listen to music these days, you know. And that the way that you write music in layers across a computer, you know, you have ultimate variety of doing whatever you want to it. And it sometimes amazes me that I think that Unknown Pleasures only existed in our heads, and the only time you could play it was when the four of us played it together. But again, the thing was that, you know, we played our manager, Love Will Tear Us Apart, and he said, "That's good, that, lads. I think that might do all right, that. I'll get Tony Wilson down." And he got Tony Wilson down, and Tony Wilson heard it and went, "Yeah, that's good. That could be good, that. Yeah. You know, we'll go and record that." I'll phone Martin Hannett up, and we phoned Martin Hannett up, and we went and recorded it, and that was Love Will Tear Us Apart done, you know, like in a week. And out, unfortunately, it coincided with Ian's death. God rest his soul, but, you know, what meant the point was is that you could do things quickly in those days. Everything didn't have to be planned like a military campaign, and, you know, you can't release a single till you finish your album, till you've got your video done, till you this and that, and all that bollocks. Really.
Mm. So you just mentioned Martin Hannett, and describing yourself as a self-taught musician, you know, you picked up a bass and just started playing it, sort of almost luck of the draw.
What's the luck of the draw?
I mean, you've since worked a lot in the studio as a producer, you know, self-produced albums and also your own projects. You've produced the Stone Roses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I hated about producers. And what I hated about Martin Hannett in particular was that he didn't do what the group wanted, because I think that producers, while they may be right, or, you know, they might be right, maybe the chorus is too long, or your vocal is slightly out of tune, or that drum loop's too busy, or da-di-da-di-da-da. Thing is that they finish the work, they get paid, and they go, and you have to live with it and talk about it ad infinitum. And the thing is that my view of producing, which is probably why I never get asked to produce anybody anymore, is that the band should always be the one that's happy, not the producer and not the record company, because the band have to live with it. So there you go. So whenever I have produced, I produced the Stone Roses and people like that, I've always, you know, if I did something the band didn't like, then I'd change it, because I always felt as a musician that they have to live with it and not me. Mm. It's my production ethic.
So, I mean, are you going back into the studio to produce anything in the near?
Well, to be honest with you, production is one of the most difficult and time-consuming jobs. And even though you get paid for it, and if you have a hit album, then you can make a fortune. I find it so consuming and such hard work. That I prefer playing in the group, really. I mean, my greatest love is playing in the group. I do DJing because the other members of the group don't want to play. So, you know, I needed something to fill me time. So when Manny asked me to DJ at Primal Scream, I said yeah. So.
Yeah. So, that initial phase when you had developed this popularity in Manchester and outside of Manchester and around the UK, taking that music then to other places, what was the...
Well, you see, that sounds easy, but it wasn't that easy, because I remember, you know, we used to play to nobody as Joy Division. We played a gig in Oldham, which is near Manchester, and there was nobody there, no one. And I remember two girls came in after about 20 minutes, and they walked up to the front of the stage because there was nobody in, and we were playing, and we stopped. And the girl went, "Hey, are you the Frantic Elevators?" And we went, no, we're Joy Division. And they went, "Fucking hell, we're in the wrong place." And they went. And so, you know, when you've played to no people, it doesn't matter, does it? And we were playing the same set, the Unknown Pleasures set, that, you know, 6 months later or a year later, you'd be playing to thousands of people. So there's no rhyme or reason to it at all, you know. I mean, the thing is I suppose that as a performer and as a musician, then every single time, you know, you play, you're tested. I mean, I was saying before that when I DJ'd at Park Life on Saturday, which was quite ironic, because when I walked on, because I start off with a slow tune, and everybody had been playing fast stuff, someone threw something at me, which was a crushed up Red Bull can. Which I thought was quite ironic, so I took the money with relish today for that. So, you know, I mean, it happens all the time. Sometimes you go down well and sometimes you go down crap. So you don't take your success anywhere with you. Everywhere you go can be really, really difficult, because it attacks your heart and your soul. If you're up there playing and someone spits at you or throws something at you or shouts, "Get off your shit," or whatever, and you're like, "That fucking cheeky bastard," you know, it gets you right in there. And it's the good thing about being in a group is at least you've got your mates to fuck off. When you DJ and you're like, "But shit, where's that big guy gone, the one that was on the end?" You know, you're like... So, I mean, performing attacks you every time, you know. It's dead easy to lose your bottle or to lose everything just by one guy going like that, you know. And I actually find it worse now because I'm sober, because my name's Peter and I'm an alcoholic. Now that I'm sober, I see everything, whereas before, when I was drinking, I didn't see anything. I was just... So it's funny, it's made it actually harder. And the thing that puzzled me is that I started off sober, so I don't know where that changed. I was sober for years playing, but now it bugs the shit out of me when people...
So there's some unpleasant experiences there. As a performer, something has been compelling you to continue writing songs and work with this group of people, and it's at times seems like it's been a difficult relationship with your other colleagues in the bands.
The difficult thing for me is that it's the only thing I know is writing songs and playing them. You know, I mean, it's very difficult for me to sit there and say to my children, "Oh, you should do your exams, because it's very important." And he goes to me, "Well, you've never got any exams, and look at you, you're all right." And I'm like, "Well, that's not the point." You know, sound like me dad. So, yeah, I mean, it's the only thing I've known is writing and performing music. And sometimes when I'm really, really pissed off with them all, and I think, "Shit, that's it. I've had enough of that knobhead, he's driving me mad. I'm going, I've had enough." And I think, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I go, "Oh, I'll play." You know, it's like that. It's a strange world, isn't it?
But obviously you do get some form of, you know, the expression of it, obviously.
Oh,
is something
the expression is I couldn't even explain to somebody when I played at, name dropping, sorry, but when we did Glastonbury last year, you know, there was 120,000 people there. And they're all sat there staring at you, you know, and it's just like absolute bizarre situation to be in. All caked in mud, off the tits on psychedelic mushrooms, you know, chanting along to Love Will Tear Us Apart and stuff like that. I mean, how could you explain something like that? It's pretty good. It's great. It's nice to be appreciated. It's nice to, you know, have your ego massaged in one way or another. And the thing is that, you know, when you sat somewhere in the 4 o'clock in the morning trying to think of a word that rhymes with witch, You know, well, we always used to call them 5 o'clock in the morning lyrics. Oh, fucking just put that in and fucking let's get out of it, it's doing me head in, you know. Then you have that side of it, the really difficult side, the writing side, and also dealing with the business side. And then, you know, the great bit is to walk out on stage and have them all scream at you, I suppose. Mm. And then enjoy what you do. The satisfaction is amazing. Mm. You know, that you get. It's not real, though, you know. As soon as you're finished, you still have to clean up dog shit and all
that. I'm not sure if you're sick of talking about the whole situation where you found yourself not only in a band that was pretty busy, but also in a band that was involved in various business enterprises, such as a certain place of entertainment called the Haçienda.
Yeah, our record company and our manager decided that because we had nowhere to go in Manchester, we should open our own club. So we did. I mean, and you know, in all fairness, the club did change. If any of you are into clubbing, he is yawning there. He must have been at one last night. It changed the face of clubbing, and with acid house music, you know, sort of created dance in England and Europe, gave it an outlet, and you know, the whole ecstasy thing just went completely through the roof. So yeah, the club was. I mean, you know, it's a very difficult thing because when we worked out how many people had been in the Haçienda in the 15 years it was opened, we reckoned that each of them had probably cost New Order and Joy Division about 10 quid each. So we'd lost that much money on the club. And even though your accountant kept saying to you it was great promotion and da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, when things are going bad and you sat there a bit skint, you're thinking, well, could have done without that promotion, really. And I'd rather have had the money, you know. But yeah, we're artists, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, the promotional value, obviously, I mean, you had to bear the brunt of it, but it's a very famous place, and the whole scene with Factory Records and the Haçienda and New Order.
I mean, thanks to 24-Hour Party People, the film, it sort of resurrected it right around the world and, you know, made it. I mean, it was a very special place. I mean, you know, the thing is that our manager did say to us, you know, I think we've done well out of Manchester, we've done well out of music, we should give something back, you know. We didn't realise that he meant everything. We were hoping he just meant a little bit of it, you know. Tenner, maybe. Not everything. So, but yeah, you mean they're the mistakes you make. You know, you sign a little bit of paper when you're hungover, and then the next thing you know, it's kicking you up the arse for 20 years, isn't it? But I mean, you know, we have to say we're still here and we haven't done badly out of it. You know, I'm a very successful musician and I've done well. But it's been hard work. I mean, I still have to work now. You know, I work for a living. I work because I love it. And that's what my wife always says, you fucking love it, shut up moaning. But I do love it, yeah. But I do still have to work for a living, so.
And I mean, when I just think of your musical output and the various styles that it's, you know, you may not be conscious of it, you know, kind of being in the middle of it all, but you seem to be drawing from a lot of different places throughout the years.
We've been really lucky. I mean, you know, for being in the right place at the right time, you'd have to say that Joy Division, Factory, New Order, Haçienda, you know, had it. They were definitely in the right place at the right time. I mean, you wrote. I mean, I think we write great music, which I think is you have to believe in yourself at some point. You have to be able to stand up and say, this is great, fuck the lot of you. You know, even when it bombs on its arse, you have to say, well, I still think it was great. I mean, I write music for myself. You know, I don't write it for, as much as I hate to say it, for you or anybody. I write it because I love it and because when I finish it, I think it's fantastic. I don't tailor-make my music for audiences. You know, I think that even as a DJ, there's an aspect of, you know, tailoring your music. Like when I played in Wellington the other night, I was saying to you, it was like an indie crowd, and they were all moaning because I was playing dance music. And you know, the devil in me thinks, well, fuck you then. You know, Tough shit. Shouldn't have come, should you? You know, it's like that. And then the other side of me thinks, am I going to get beaten up? Well, maybe I should put some on. Yeah.
So when you DJ, I mean, it's all kinds of stuff that you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, I always found DJing absolutely ridiculous. I thought they were a bunch of egotistical pricks. And I was right. Now I'm an egotistical prick as well. It's fucking great, isn't it? Then again, some would say I've always been an egotistical prick. But no, I mean, I didn't understand it, to be honest. And the only reason I began DJing was because Manny, the bass player at Primal Scream, who's my friend, he said to me, it's a great way of getting pissed for nothing. So I thought, that sounds interesting. So I went to see him. We did a gig in Barcelona, which was absolutely hilarious because he was twatted. And I didn't do anything. I just stood there, you know, answering questions about why New Order don't gig. Why you never play in Spain? Why you never come to us? Oh, he was throwing the records at people when they were annoying him. And he was spinning, he was scratching at one point. Really into it, and I went over and said, Manny, that's not on that. And he went, oh, fucking hell, right, okay then. You know, and I thought, this seems like a proper good laugh, this DJ. And that was the reason why I started DJing. And I went through the drinking part of it, getting completely pissed and, you know, chasing girls around and stuff like that, which I'm not proud of. But, and then I got into the musical side of it. I suppose it was obvious, really. Then I started putting music together that I thought would be good. And to be honest, after being in the studio with New Order for 3 years, that I had been when I began it, and the thing that pissed me off most was that we weren't playing. You know, we'd been in the studio for 3 years, we'd done a record, but we weren't doing any gigs, which I found it very irksome. I started DJing and then started thinking about music to play to people, and obviously got into the whole reason of why DJs DJ, because they put music together in a way that makes it entertaining, makes it have an impact, and you know, people take it for granted. You know, I can count on, God, everybody hand here how many times I've been into a club and never noticed the DJ. But if he wasn't there, we'd all be a bit bored, wouldn't we? You know, it's one of those funny things, whereas I was very scathing when I began, and now I think they're great. I don't.
I mean, regardless of how incredibly out of it a lot of people must have been at the time, I mean, that club we were talking about before seems to be a bit of a landmark for DJs exposing crowds to music which they may not otherwise have heard, putting it together in a way that they may not, you know, have experienced before, and it's led into various different you know, subcultures around the world.
We had the record in the Haçienda of paying a DJ the most that a DJ had ever been paid, which was Sasha for his first sold-out night in the Haçienda. He got paid £2,000 in 1988 or 89, which was quite a lot of money then. So I suppose in a way, you know, that whole DJ as superstar culture came from acid house. And I mean, it's funny, as a musician, when you're not a DJ, you just think, well, all they do is play records. Well, you know, they're playing our records. What's all they're doing? But I mean, obviously there's more to it than that. But I mean, to my mind, I still think the musician, which I'd have to say is the most important person. Because he wouldn't have anything to play, would he? I mean, the reason that most DJs get into writing their own stuff is because they get paid more for playing their own stuff than they get paid for playing your stuff or my stuff. That's how they make the money on publishing. You know, so that's like a step. It's a career step, I suppose. Don't know if I've disillusioned anybody there.
So you came out of the studio last year after 3 years, did you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, off and on, we weren't, when you get to our age, as daft as it sounds, you don't do it the way that you did, you know. I mean, I used to go in the studio and I'd do 18 hours I'd just go back, sleep, go back to the studio. Did that for 20 odd years, you know. You lose a few girlfriends, wives, you miss a few children growing up, and then you think, what the fuck am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you do it in a different way now. You know, I do it as a 10 to 6 as a job. I think it's that interesting thing that, you know, when you start, you live for the group, and then as you get on through it, you know, you do the group to live. It's just, I mean, I've done the intensity and I've done all that lot. And I'm very lucky in that I have a bedrock that enables me to come on a jolly to Australia, you know, and play in front of a few people in a park in Melbourne or whatever. You know, I'm sort of very lucky and get paid for doing it. It's great. But without the bedrock of the work that I put in, the intensity of that, you know, takes you to the edge in many ways, then you wouldn't have that freedom to do it. So I think I've paid me dues.
I mean, you just mentioned before writing Love Will Tear Us Apart in an afternoon or an evening.
Mm-hmm.
That actual songwriting process, how does that, how is that, how many different forms does that take? I mean,
well, to me, it only takes 2 forms. Either it comes really quickly or it takes forever. And if you look at a song like Blue Monday, that took a hell of a long time to write. Because of the technology we were using, the way that Bernard and Stephen approached the technology was fantastic, because I found it as boring as shit, and I would have been happy to just play on the guitars and not be, you know, use it at all. I found it really dull and tiresome, but they persevered and went through all the control voltage and building their own drum machines and working your way through of joining synths together to do pulses, to split off. I mean, we had a guy who built, we used, the drum machine came from an organ, you know, like your granny has, playing bossa nova and waltz and all that, and we took it out and got this guy to rebuild it and make it so you had separate outputs for each instrument. And we did that in 1980. And we used that on stage, which was an absolutely bizarre thing to use on stage from your granny's room, to fire the drum machine. And a guy converted it from control voltage so that you could pulse a synth that Bernard built from a kit in England called the Transcendent 2000, which never fucking worked. And we went through all that, and basically it consumed you unbelievably, the amount of work that you had to put in. I mean, you know, you're very lucky these days. You can just buy it, turn it on. You've got a complete home studio within about half an hour with as many sounds as you want. You know, it's incredible. I mean, that's why it was really nice when I was watching the girl downstairs playing the squeeze box, because it was absolutely wonderful to hear an instrument, you know. It's really nice. Because normally whenever I hear an instrument, I press a an instrument comes, you know. It's really nice that some people actually play still. It's fantastic. But the technology to do Blue Monday was unbelievable. I mean, when we think that for a Prophet 5 in 1980, you'd pay £2,000 for a Prophet 5. God knows how much that is today. We're in the region of 25, 30 grand or something. Yeah. Unbelievable. And we had 5 of them because they were so unreliable that you couldn't rely on one to play. You had to have 3 set up, ready to switch them over if they went down on stage, and 2 in the back for when the other 3 went. It was literally like, you know, roulette as to whether any of the bleeding stuff worked. And when the emulator came along, I don't know if you know the emulator. It was a sample player. You used to load a sample in on a floppy disk and play it on the keyboard. And we got the first one, and we thought it was just a bee's knees. It's on every song. Hey, wow, yeah, you know, great. Really overdid it. And it was so unreliable that every time you used to go on stage, I remember we were playing a gig in Germany, and we had this thing, and it wouldn't load up. We kept putting the disc in, it just wouldn't. It was driving me mad. It was getting on and on and on, and our sound guy was watching it. And I saw him get off the podium at the back, and he walked, stormed all the way through, right up, come up to the side of the stage, got on the stage, come on the stage, picked up the emulator, threw it on the floor, picked it back up and put it on the stand, and it loaded. And it was that, the technology was that shit. And I remember we had a phone call at the venue in Bremen or something, and this German guy came to see us, and we'd got into the habit then of banging the emulator on one of the legs with a hammer. And if you hit it on the right leg, which was the top right, it'd load. And we had a phone call in the production office, and it was Erasure who were playing somewhere in Germany. They'd heard that we'd figured out how to fix the emulator, and said, which leg do you hit with the hammer to make the fucking thing load? So, you know, I mean, you went through all that equipment thing of people using you as the guinea pig and your money, you know, to do it. So the thing is that the sound that you did create and that Bernard and Stephen were the pioneers of it. It was really, really difficult to do. It was really difficult in those days to make an electronic record. Mm. But as you said before, you know, the perseverance and the effort was worth it. You can dine out on it for years.
It's definitely it's definitely worth it in the case of Blue Monday, which is a record that I'm sure we've all heard in all kinds of different places. It's one of the biggest selling records of all time, I think, on the 12-inch format.
Yes, and we lost 10p on every copy because the sleeve was, when they designed the sleeve, because it had cutouts in it, it was really expensive to make, but nobody noticed that. So when they sold them, they were losing money on each sale.
Do you think all this is paying off in some kind of karma bank somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about being independent, you see. You can make mistakes like that, whereas if you'd have been on Polydor, someone might have come along and gone, hang on, we did this in 19... you know, but, I mean, it was a fantastic sleeve. It was the way it was based on the floppy disk. It was absolutely revolutionary, and Steve Morris's great quote about it is, it was the bits that you didn't get that were expensive. The holes that were punched out were the bits that cost the money. The nothing bit. Which was quite interesting.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to hear this, discussing these kind of tensions that you had in the band.
All these mistakes.
And mistakes and various...
Maybe I should do a book of mistakes, not to make.
Problems along the way. I mean, just listening from an outside perspective, it's this ability to compromise and the flexibility that you have each sort of shown to the project, as well as maybe the single-mindedness at other times, well, I mean, that have led to this stream of creativity over the years.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about being in a group, to my mind, is compromise, because it's all about chemistry. I mean, I don't know whether you're all solo artists or whether you're in groups. I don't know, but speaking as a group member, you know, you start off with your friends, and then within about 6 months, you can't fucking stand the sight of each other. And that lasts for, as it is in my case, for about 30 years. You know, you get less for murder, don't you? Really. But I mean, it's about chemistry, you know. I mean, I appreciate when we all went off and did our solo projects that, you know, it didn't have the chemistry that New Order and Joy Division had. But it was still great. I had a great time, you know. So it's a difficult thing. I mean, being in a group's difficult. And the thing is that I've never met any group ever that ever got on. Ever. Primal Scream got on for a while, but even that didn't last. And then you stand there with him and you're going, fucking look at that twat, he's driving me fucking mad, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him in a minute. If he fucking comes near me now, I'm going to kill him. All right, mate, yeah. Fucking twat. Bastard, you know, it's like that. Oh, every single group's exactly the same. It's fantastic.
But I mean, in the case of, say, the electronics coming into the group, and suddenly, you know, you're the bass player, but you're contending with these sequenced bass lines, but you find a way to contribute to the music in a whole new way by playing higher on the instrument, by actually turning the bass into
I started that in Joy Division, really. It was Ian Curtis that spotted... I mean, Ian was, you know, he was the singer, so he'd just sit there while we played, and when he heard something that he liked, he said, that sounds good, do that, and you put a guitar to that, Barney, or do that. I mean, that's why it was so difficult after he killed himself, selfish bastard. We had to record it then and figure it out ourselves. But, you know, the whole thing changed when you got to New Order, because he was always the one that listened and spotted it. And it was him, I'd have to say, was the one that spotted that playing high up on the neck gave you an identity and made it unique, if you like. And the thing was, is that transferred actually quite well to New Order, because while Bernard sang, I could play round his singing because he can't sing and play at the same time, in the same way that I can't sing and play at the same time. I can only do one or the other, not like Sting. So, it's a funny one, that one. I was thinking about a bass in Florida in this shop, semi-acoustic bass, and it was really nice. And the guy said to me, he said, don't buy that one. He said, we've got a really, really special one coming in tomorrow. And I went, oh, well, what's special about it? And he went, I won't tell you. Come in tomorrow, you can have this really, really special one. Leave that one, buy this one tomorrow. And I went in and I said, what's special? And he went, Sting signed it. Fuck off. I bought the other one. Oh, so anyway, where was I? Forgotten.
No, it does work very well.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's right.
You playing Sting's bass on those tracks?
Yeah. No, yeah, he did. It fitted in quite well. But I mean, I suppose you'd have to say that it's a mixture of talent and luck, wouldn't you? What else can you say? Didn't plan it. You never planned anything. Mm-hmm. As you can tell by all the mistakes. So.
No, that's what I'm getting at, really. It's a jigsaw puzzle of all these different personalities and different approaches. What the different members of the group seem to find important at different times. Yeah. But I'm interested to know how the band New Order is at the moment. I know that there's been a fair amount of gigging lately, and how that
well,
approach...
for us, there's been a fair amount of gigging. I think we did 13, like this year, which is a lot for New Order. We're not.
And is the electronic gear behaving itself better these days?
Ironically, our setup, you see, I don't know if most of you know this, but most of it's on tape anyway. When bands play, we either use DAT, which we used to do in the old days. Now I take it most people play on CD or they use a hard drive. We still use a multi-track. We use a 16-track player, so that things are used. We still use samples. We still trigger keyboards from the tape and stuff like that. So we try and keep as much of it live as you can these days. I mean, the funny thing is that we went around the world for 10, 15 years, giving all this gear a fantastic holiday. It's not very appreciative gear, is it? It just falls apart. And you pick it up in Bangkok airport and stuff like that. It doesn't travel well. So you do get to the point where you're thinking, well, fuck, I can't travel with this because it's just falling apart all the time. So you switch to, which is quite luckily. But I mean, it's still that thing, isn't it? It's all about performance, and when you walk out on stage or when you go out to play or whatever, it's about grabbing the moment and making it yours, and sending whoever's watching home thinking, fucking hell, he was good or he was shit, or as long as you get some reaction. I think that's what it's about, and really I don't mind if people mime or if people play to backing track, for the simple reason that it still takes a lot of skill to pull it off, and if somebody pulls it off to a backing track, then you're going to appreciate it just as much as if they pull it off and you've got a 30-piece orchestra all playing live. I'm not snobbish about that,
That's some more of that compromising and flexibility I was talking about before. And is that still very much a part of taking the stage show on the road nowadays? I mean, what's the approach now to doing a big show at Glastonbury? Is it just like the old days, or what the...
Well, I find it quite odd, actually, because we get loads of stick off our fans for playing the same set every night, which we don't do. We do vary it a little, but I think with the time constraints on you and the fact that you're all doing other things and you don't live 100% for the band, you can't do that. And so our punters, our fans, are always complaining because we play the same set every night. And we're thinking, well, you're not supposed to play to the same people every night. It's like us complaining about, well, you here again, I really don't like you being here, because you're here every night. Why don't you piss off? You pay to the people in Ireland. For the Irish people, you don't want some geek turning up from Manchester going, oh, you're playing the same set you did in Manchester. You're like, fuck, what are you on about? It don't make any sense. So it's just a weird thing. So you sort of go through and moaning for ages. You should play something different. And yet you might think, well, if we leave something out, the Irish kid might be really upset that you're not playing Ceremony or Blue Monday because we've put a different song in for you. It comes to that thing of how far do you go about pleasing people? How far do you bend over?
But it is very important to still be playing at this stage.
Yeah, my love is playing music. I love playing bass. I love it more than anything in the world. Most of my arguments within the group were when Bernard wanted to get modern, can't you play some keyboards? And I'd say, no, I can't. I don't want to play keyboards. I just want to play bass. So we used to fight about it because he felt it was making it old-fashioned. Like, we should be like Depeche Mode or something like that. I don't.
And also something we were discussing actually upstairs about the importance of playing live, which is something that maybe more studio-based musicians, producers might like to hear about. Something that seems to be a bit of a change in the music industry over the last couple of years. What with, transferring music through burning, downloading, whatnot. It seems like you can't stop it. It's how music gets around nowadays. It seems to be a very natural way for music to travel, but it seems to impact a lot on album sales. If you produce a CD, a studio project.
Yeah, our LP got leaked by supposedly a trusted journalist and put on the internet, which as a musician can be quite, you never know. You'll never know if that guy putting it on the internet has cost you 100,000 or cost you 1 million sales. You'll never know, will you? But it happened to the Chili Peppers this time, with Stadium Arcadium. It happened to us, I suppose. It's life's rich tapestry, isn't it? Really, you can't stop people. I used to do it. Because my mate was skint, I'd record an LP on cassette and give it him. So everybody does it. I do it. It's quite.
It seems to have reached the point now where, in the past, maybe it did affect your market a little bit, but at the same time, the music would get further to people who would never dream of even buying it. But now it seems to have reached the point where even the people who would have bought the album originally maybe are...
No, I still think that people who would buy your album would buy it because I would. Mm-hmm. I was in many jaunts at airports. I bought Primal Scream LP, and I bought it because I love them. And I think, oh, fuck it, I'll buy it, I could ask Manny for it, or I could ask Bobby Gillespie for it, you know what I mean? But it was nice to buy it, so I still think that people are the same as me, and if they like a record, they're going to buy it. I think the thing that's changed is kids, really, because children, when they get into and they have the technology now, the freedom to do what they want, so they don't have to go out and buy a record, they can download it. My children sort of don't think that music exists in any other form than a download. Well, why would you want 12 songs? I only want the one that's a hit. I don't want the other 11. It's just a change of... It's modern life, isn't it? It's the way it is. There's so much choice, and there's so much freedom and flexibility. And the thing is that you can't moan about that, can you? You can't.
It seems to be modern, but at the same time, it's going back to sort of an older model where the artists and the bands actually really do need to get out and reach the live audience.
Yeah, we were talking about this before. What we were saying was that in record company terms, that there's a point that groups reach that they call the Rolling Stones moment, which is when people want to see them live, but they don't want to buy their new record. And as my accountant put it, it's just a way of people, reliving the glory days when they were off the tits 20 years ago. They just want to hear that stuff, not your current stuff. And it's becoming actually recognised in a lot of older groups with a big back catalogue that people like to hear the old stuff, which I suppose is logical, really. The more than the new stuff. And it affects you because as an artist, your record company can't justify lending you money or spending money on recording because they're not earning it back on your records. You earn it on the live performances, but the record company doesn't get anything from your live performances, so they're saying, well, why should we bankroll your record when we're not earning anything and you're getting all the money from... They don't say that. They mean that, I suppose. So, I mean, it's just a different way in that, as we were saying before, that gigs are now very expensive, but people will go and pay it. I mean, it was $86 for that Park Lives thing. And yet, if people walked in Virgin, they'd go, you know, $10 for that? Oh, shit, man. You know, it's just a different thing, isn't it? People seem to be happy to pay to see you live, which I'm not going to complain about, but sort of pull back a bit when they buy records. If everybody else has found that, I think.
Now, I would like to open this up to the floor and to see if there's anyone out there who has any queries, any things that they are wondering about that maybe Peter Hook could fill them in on.
Problem page. Hello.
I'm from Brazil, and there almost all people don't have money to buy and pay about 50 reals in one CD. And it's not why we don't want to take the CD. You understand me?
Well, I mean, I've just been to Brazil and I just played to 8,000 people, you know, in a sold-out thing. So, I mean, I do appreciate that there's poor people everywhere. But what I'm saying to you is that as a musician, at the point I am in my career now, that I find that you're able to reach a lot more people. I'm only talking about me, you know, that you're able to reach a lot more people playing live who have the money than people who buy your records. Your record sales have diminished, whereas your live, the amount of people you play to, like the year after we did our record, we did nearly every festival in Europe and England, and at the end of it, we played to like 2 million people, you know, in like 13 gigs, and yet we'd only sold about 350,000 records. Yeah. You know, so I mean, I don't know whether it is poverty that makes people do that. I'm only talking about from my point of view as a musician.
Yeah, sure.
You know.
I was going to say, I mean, a lot of people in this room have seen 24-Hour Party People, and Steve Coogan plays a very interesting Tony Wilson. What was the real Tony Wilson like?
He's like family to me, you know. I hate him and love him in equal measures. I mean, you know, people considering... I mean, there's a lot of history involved with Tony Wilson, who was the head of our record company. I mean, when the record company went bankrupt, he owed New Order, Joy Division, about 3 million. So 3 million of our money just disappeared. With the Haçienda and the bar that we opened in Manchester, we reckoned about another 6 million. You know, we lost a lot of money, and people find it hard to believe why you have anything to do with him, but I suppose, you know, I'm lucky. My accountant always says, because he's a dreaded accountant, he always says to you that as long as you keep earning money, the fact that you've lost money doesn't hurt. It's when you stop earning money, then it will really hurt, you know, so I suppose I've got that to look forward to, really. But no, I mean, I get on really well with Tony. I think his ideas and his way of working is fantastically anarchic. But, you know, it does get to the point where after 15 years you're bored with anarchy. You know, how many riots do you want to go to? You just want to sit at home with a cup of tea and have a beer, watch telly, you know. It's like you have to balance it out, don't you? Whereas with Factory and the Haçienda, there was no balance. You were always veering from one catastrophic thing to another. And in the end, they were using our records, New Order's records, to fund all the other acts on the label and run this dodgy nightclub, which I must admit I had the best nights of my life in, without a shadow of a doubt. But, you know, you can't do that, you can't. I mean, he was going, come on, you've got to hurry up and finish the record, you know, the Haçienda's running out of money. You know, fucking hell. You know, so.
What you were saying before about, you know, the Haçienda, you know, when you think about people like Mike Pickering and all that, I mean, what was were you guys around much during this period when, you know, these guys were actively chasing out these American records?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there was this, yeah, I mean, tell us a bit about, what was the vibe in the air like? And I mean, have you got any music as well?
If I could remember it, I'd tell you. No, it was great. I had a right laugh, yeah. It was rocking. Mm. How can you describe something like that, you know? Everyone was off the tip. Well, I mean, the funny thing is that everybody is construed as being, like the drugs have a major part to play in it. But, I mean, in all truthfulness, I'd say in the Haçienda, out of 2,000 people, maybe 10% were taking drugs. So the others were having a great time, you know, they were high on life. And in some ways, the drug aspects of it gets pushed because it's, you know, on the edge and, you know, the way that rock and roll is, I suppose. But it simply wasn't true that it was... I still think that it was about the music, not about the drugs. And yet everybody thinks that all that acid house dance thing is about ecstasy and drugs. And I don't think it is. I think it's about people enjoying music and having a great time, personally. So I mean, I had some of the best nights of my life, if I could only remember them.
Hello. A lot of us have seen the movie, of course. So I was wondering, what do you think about it, and what's true and what's definitely not true?
Well, it depends on who you talk to about which bit's true or not. I mean, we had the... I mean, I do love this thing, the way that filmmakers talk to you and get you to do their job for them, you know. I mean, like Frank Cottrell Boyce, who wrote it, just did interviews with New Order, which we were sort of happy to talk to him about, got the best bits of what you talked about, and just put them all together and made it entertaining. So sort of some of it was true and some of it wasn't, some of it was glamorized, some of it wasn't. Everybody's memory of it is different. And I thought it was quite interesting that Tony Wilson's book about it, he wrote his book about that time to the film and changed it so that it fitted in with the film. And I was like, why have you done that? You know, that isn't true. And I was like, and he said to me, well, you've got to realise, Peter, that fiction is much more interesting than fact. I mean, I don't think it is, personally. You know. So, I mean, it was good. It was quite weird. I mean, I'd never seen... Obviously, when Ian died, I didn't see him. I mean, I was only 22. I was just, you know, just a kid. My world had caved in, so I didn't address anything like that. So it was the first time I'd ever seen that aspect of it, which was a bit unsettling. It was quite sad. Also, all the stories, you know, about all losing the money and all that lot, is, to me, that's fucking cataclysmic, you know. I mean, that means my kids aren't provided for or whatever. And yet to sit there and have everyone laughing at it. Ah, they lost 10p on every copy. You're like, you fuckers, what are you fucking laughing at, you cheeky bastards, you know. But that's the thing, it's funny to... It was done in a light-hearted way, you know. So I suppose once you got used to that aspect of it, it was all right. I thought he did a good job. I mean, and the thing is that you have to sort of measure it, you know, and it's... Everywhere you go in the world, people have seen 24-hour party people, and when I DJ, it's always 24-hour party people featuring Peter Up from New Order. So, you know, it still keeps me going, so I suppose it was good. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Joy Division film, which is called Control, that they're doing at the moment, has any impact like 24-hour party people. I don't know, because it's darker. Whether it will or not, I don't know, you know. But I mean, if it does, it's pretty good having a film made about you while you're still alive. You know, two.
How does your creative process differ, say, between when you've been in a band and you've been working as a solo artist? Like, do you find that being in the band scenario is more inspiring or less inspiring than working by yourself? Or, because I'd imagine it's a combination of the love-hate type relationship type thing, but being in a band may be a more inspirational scenario to be in certain situations.
I mean, as a musician, the way that I write, I prefer to write from jamming. It's always, whenever I start something, I'm, you know, 9 times out of 10 I'll start with me and somebody else jamming. I've started an offshoot. I've started a group with Manny out of Primal Scream and Andy Rourke out of the Smiths, and everyone was taking the piss out of us because it's got 3 bass players in, which sort of made us all the more determined to do it, really. And we did it, and it actually sounds really good, but Manny and I did it as a reaction because Bobby wouldn't gig. He was pissed off. Because Bernard wouldn't gig, I was pissed off. So we decided to do something. We got something together, it started so well, so then we decided to gig. So for me, writing, I write from jams. That's what I prefer to write for. I mean, it's a very, quite an arduous process because you know, you jam for an hour, and then you have to sit there listening to it and go, oh, maybe we could get something out of that. And like people go, what are you going to get out of that? And then you get Crystal. You know, so it's just the way that different people work. The way I like to work is from jamming, so that something exists, and then you hear something in it, and you work on it. I'm shit at, I can't do. I tried to do when we split up in 1990, and I tried to do something on my own. And I thought, right, fuck it, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm sick of them bastards. Really had enough of them. This is, you know, freedom. Come on, got all the gear going, and then started off and listening to it. And I thought, oh, that sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, fuck, I'm on my own. Shit. So I prefer to work with people, and you know, from that point of view. But I mean, it can be inspiring. But also, when someone's like that, going, hang on, just hang on, I've just got this, hang on, no, you just stop playing, I'll just put this fucking riff, just hang on, you go, fucking come on!
When you're a group and everyone is jamming and everyone is contributing to a song, how do you decide which one has written the song?
Now, there you go, the reason why most groups split up. You know, your money, you know, you start off with your mates, and then when your mate wants £5 more than you, he's not your mate anymore, is he? My belief in publishing is that everybody should have the same. If you're in a band, it should be the same. Regardless of who does what, I think the important thing is that you're all together. I mean, I'm not talking about some idiot. I mean, my mates have just kicked a guy out of their group, who's been in the group for 18 years, and they've just kicked him out. And I was saying to him, oh, you know, that must have been really tough. And he went, well, to be honest with you, it wasn't, because out of the 8 albums we'd done, he was only there for 2. The other 6, he was just off his head, pissed up in the corner. They got sick of his wife phoning up and saying to him, can I speak to him? And he wasn't there. He was in the pub around the corner, you know, charlied off his nuts. So in a situation like that, you go, hang on, no, you know. I mean, it's the most difficult thing in the world, and all you can do is try and reconcile it if you want to go on. Because if you don't reconcile it, then you won't go on. So maybe you have to take more of a compromise, because the future might be more important than... It's entirely down to how you can live with it. If the singer gets double and you can live with it, then fine. If you can't live with it, then you have to get out.
So if you're making a song and one person comes up with a very simple idea, but it might be the thing that makes the song as good as it gets.
Well, I don't agree, because if you listen to the Stone Roses, where would the Stone Roses be without Rennie and Manny? And they never got any songwriting credits. They never got any publishing, so which I think is absolutely ridiculous. If you look at a band like the Smiths, Morrissey and Marr actually said to Rourke and Joyce that it'd be easier to collect the money for the publishing if they did it in 2 names. Is that fair? Is it fair?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Rourke and Joyce had, I think, maybe not as much as Morrissey and Marr, because they wrote the melodies, the lyrics, and da-di-da, but I still think they're worthy of being included. But, I mean, a lot of bands do that. If you get a band like the Beautiful South split publishing 8 ways. How many people are in the band? That's the way they split it. And the singer does that because he thinks that that's fair, because you're all living together and working together, which I agree with. But other people don't, you see. And I think it is a simple matter of what you can live with. And I mean, everybody thinks they did it, don't they? I did that. That was me, that. That was me, that. If it hadn't been for that word, I give you, you know, da. Well, how can you... You can just argue till you're blue in the face, can't you? I think the thing that makes bands work and makes it work is compromise. You have to swallow it. Sometimes you don't, you know. Sometimes it is down to you. But, I mean, every group that I've worked with, I've always split it equally, which is, I don't know, it's just me. Daft. Yeah. So none of you are coming in a band with me, right?
You know, you've obviously kind of, it seems to me like you've followed the road less travelled, really. Like, you know, you've done all these kind of very strange things. You know, you made these bizarre decisions, lost all this money, at the same time created this amazing art, achieved a degree of immortality, if you like. You've got some great stories, but I don't know, is it worth it?
Yeah, of course it is, yeah. I wouldn't be here, would I?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't worth it. It's been fantastic, I have a great time. Yeah. I mean, it's all about work, really. I mean, I love to work. I can't get round that bit of staying at home yet. I can't do it yet. And even though, you know, you feel guilty, like it's my son's birthday next Wednesday, I'm not there, he's 17. He don't give a fuck about it, he doesn't talk to me anyway, you know what I mean? He's a teenager, for God's sake, he don't care. But it bugs me, you know, that I'm not home for his birthday. I mean, I don't even live with him, really. So, I mean, the chances are he'd probably be out with his mates, getting pissed somewhere, so he wouldn't want me hanging around anyway, but it doesn't stop you, you know, feeling bad about it or whatever. But, I mean, part and parcel of what you do as a musician is play your music to people. And what you do as a DJ is travel and play your music to people. That's what it gives you, doesn't it? You know, someone said to me, come on, do you want to come to Brazil? Do you want to go to America? Do you want to go to Canada? And I went, fucking right, I do, yeah, come on. You know, and that's what I've done all my life, really. I've toured all my life. And when I don't do it, I get ratty.
Did you guys always work with like a manager from early?
Say that again, sorry.
Did you always work with a manager early on?
With a manager?
Yeah, like when you first started out, or?
Yeah, I mean, what happened with our manager was that we decided that our manager, or maybe he decided, I can't remember now, was as important as the rest of us. And to my mind, 30 years later, we made a mistake and we gave our manager 20% of the publishing, which you shouldn't do, for the simple reason that you can give him the publishing without it coming out of your publishing. You can give it him as a commission.
Okay.
So because we were all in it together, and we did go through a lot together, I mean, the guy's dead now, you know, so we gave him 20% of the publishing, the manager. I don't know any other band that's done that.
But that was it quite early on that you started?
Yeah, it was very early on, yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it now, let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So
not for any reason. I mean, you know, with management and agents, I mean, the hardest thing to find in the world is a good manager, right? Because, you know, when it comes down to it, experience will give you the ability to maybe deal with people when you go and do things like this, or when you go and do things like when I go and DJ in a club or whatever. I have the ability to deal with people. But, you know, when you don't have to do that bit, and you can concentrate on the bit you do best,
yeah,
the music and all that bit, it's a fantastic release. But I would have to say that finding a manager is the most difficult thing in the world, I find, as a musician.
Yeah.
I've bought more fucking sports cars for tossers than anybody I know. And they've ruined, you know, they get the advance, they fuck off with their 20%, see me new car, you know, and then they do naff all for you, and they end up sacking them. I must have sacked loads and loads of managers. I mean, my view of management is if you've got a great band, it's very, very difficult to fuck up.
Yeah.
If you've got a shit band and you need a fucking great manager.
But is that point where, you know, like you're saying, if you're trying to balance all those things at once, it becomes difficult because it starts to take away from the music in certain times?
It's impossible. As a group, we try to manage ourselves, and it's impossible. It really does your head in, because there's only a certain amount of rejection you can take. It just does your head in. And the thing is that the way I look at it you'd have to decide for yourselves whether it was even worth thinking about, is that if some guy comes to you, he's got passion, he's got intensity, then it's worth giving it a go. But you have got to weigh it up on the other hand. You know, what we need, really, is a school for managers, because musicians tend to make music quite naturally, correct me if I'm wrong, and quite easily, and it's quite, management is a real art. And
yeah,
you know, well, I've been in record companies. When I was on Polydor with Monaco, Monaco sacked all the bands that had shit managers. Not musical. They just simply sacked the bands that had shit managers, which was nearly all of them, as it happened. They kept Ian Brown because his manager was good. You know, so I mean, it can be that important that you're a good manager, but it is like, you know, throwing a dart at a dartboard.
Yeah. So generally, since you first began, the whole the booking side of things, all that was generally you had someone who was taking care of that, or you did a lot of it.
No, I mean
when
it was done very much by word of mouth when I started. You know, I mean a lot of the punk gigs you did as favours. You know, I mean the second gig we ever did, we supported the Adverts and Penetration in Newcastle, and the reason we got that gig was because we'd done a gig with Penetration the night before, and they said, we're doing a gig tomorrow, why don't you come down and play? You know, and you did a lot of that. I mean, you had to put your hand in your pocket, you know, you had to pay for petrol, and we slept in the van overnight. It was fucking hell, you know, it was terrible, freezing, but that's what you had to do to sort of get to the position where you're getting paid to do gigs. But I mean, it does come down to your music, doesn't it? If your music's good and you believe in it, and you just carry on. And I think the interesting thing about musicians is that they will carry on. A lot of them blatantly when they're getting nowhere, but you know, if you meet the guy, he's still at it. You look at somebody like Baby Bird or whatever, who I was a great fan of, and I was really shocked to discover that Baby Bird had put out 8 LPs before he had a hit album, you know. So it does always surprise you. Someone like James Blunt even he's done a few albums that got nowhere before he had it. So the thing is, as a musician, it's in you, that doggedness, I suppose, to keep going, thinking that you're right when everybody else thinks you're shit. You know, it's like that, isn't it? It's a very, very difficult thing. I mean, we got an award in England from the publishing, PRS, I don't know what it is in Australia, what it's called, but it's one of those, we're glad you're still alive awards, you know, 25 years on, well done, lads. And the guy who was head of the PRS was talking about musicians, and he was talking about the amount of revenue that PRS take in, you know, is unbelievable amount of money with your Paul McCartneys and everybody. They collect it all and give it out. And he was saying that in England, out of the whole population of England, there's only 2,000 musicians that earn enough to make it their primary job.
Wow.
Now, when you see the queues for X Factor and Pop Idol, you'd think it was 20 million of us that were earning enough money.
That's good to know.
Well, I hope it don't depress you. But it could be 2001, couldn't you? But, you know, I mean, I was shocked at that. I thought, fucking hell, is that the you know, there's so few of us that make a living out of it. It really surprised me.
Hi. I'm a DJ, so I was not really offended by your way of putting the DJ thing. But I wanted to ask you about DJing, because you talked about the compromising within a band. What do you feel like when you stand in front of an audience playing records? Do you think that you should compromise with your audience, or?
Well, I'm a little different as a DJ, because I'm what's termed a celebrity DJ, which in England, a lot of the time, considering there's me, Sean Ryder, Bez, Manny that do it, you know, it's a lot of people come along to have a look at the old geezer that was in a band, you know, he was in the Stone Roses, let's go and see what he does, the toss or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's that aspect to it. When you get there and play, then that's when you either stand or fall, don't you? You know, either people enjoy what you do or they don't enjoy what you do. That is the art of it. So I come in at a sort of different thing as a DJ. I mean, I don't think you should compromise, because I was saying to my learned friend here earlier that it makes you make mistakes. You know, I have things that I do, parameters that I work with, and I know what makes me happy, what I think keeps the intensity up, what I think is a good song. But I mean, I've fallen on my arse, you know, many a time. You can't. One of the great things, I suppose, about what you do is that, as we were saying, that it's always exciting. Like, you know, being hit by a crushed up Red Bull can when I walked on and played my first song at Park Life on Saturday. You know, I was like, you know, this could be interesting. You know, and then you carry on and play. You pick yourself up and you have to get on with it, don't you? You know. So I don't know. I find when I compromise, I make a balls of it, and they're not happy, and I'm not happy. So what I'd rather have at the end of a night is, as much as I hate to say it, I'd rather have me happy than anybody else, because it's me that has to do the travelling. You know, and my mate was telling me that Armand van Helden was telling him that he DJs for free. He said they pay me to travel and hang around in airports and, you know, sit on planes and stuff like that. Which I suppose it's hard, and you've got to be sort of true to yourself. And, you know, maybe it comes to the point where you sort of do it subconsciously. I mean, I was telling him that I played in Wellington, and I play a lot of dance remixes and New Order stuff, and I play indie, a bit of punk and stuff, even two harps. And the people hated the dance bit, because it was an indie club. Nobody had told me, you know, they just booked me, and I tell them what I play, and then you just go and do it. And the promoter panicked because they were leaving, because they weren't drinking. So he said to my guy who booked me to take me off, bring him off, you know, get him off. So the guy really upset me because I'm playing, and he's like, well, you gotta get off now. And I'm going, you told me 2.5 hours, what are you fucking talking about? He's going, no, but you got to, and I'm going, what are you talking about? And all the punters are screaming at me, you know, play Monday. And I'm like, hang on a minute, but just hang on, like this, you know, and I fucking ruined it. I thought, what the fuck's going on now? You know, no. So anyway, I just went into the indie part then of my set. And then the promoter must have thought, oh, that's all right, he's playing indie now, we'll forget him. So the guy never came back. So I'm like, where's that fucker gone? Where's he gone, you know? What's going on here, what's going on? So I finished my set, went backstage, he was asleep on the couch. So what the fuck are you doing, you know, winding me up like that? So, you know, it's going to happen, isn't it?
That would be a very good explanation, I think. I wanted to ask you as well about Blue Monday. Because, you know, it's turned up in so many places, like you said, all different genres of
remixes.
Yeah, but as well the original,
Rockabilly,
like in different regions, in hip-hop DJ sets or whatever, all over the world. When you made it, did you intend to do like a danceable record, or was it just out of inspiration?
We started off with the inspiration for Blue Monday came from a bass drum riff that Bernard had heard on a Donna Summer B-side. And we used that and created the track round that. And then he wanted to do an umpa, umpa, umpa that he'd heard on a Sylvester record. And we put that together with the drum riff using a DMX Mark II. We used a transcendent sequencer that he'd built himself, firing a Prophet 5. And you used to have to do it in the old binary code, you know, with the off and ons. So if you made a mistake, you had to go right to back to the start and start the whole thing again. And Blue Monday was 10 minutes long. It drove us absolutely insane, because if you made a mistake at 8 minutes, you had to go back to the top and program on, for every single thing right to the end. You know, it was absolutely mind-boggling the way you did it. So, the interesting thing about Blue Monday was we'd written it, and we were over the moon with it. We thought it was great, which is quite unusual, really, because a lot of the time you have self-doubt, you know. And Steve, our drummer, is quite a weird character. He's very eccentric, very English, eccentric, and he always likes to program in the most inaccessible spot. And in this case, he was using a kettle lead that was about that long. So the DMX was under a chair, and he was on the floor programming it. And we were going, why don't you fucking bring it up, you know, so we can no, it's all right, I'm fine here, you know, when he's programming it away. And we'd done this drum track, we had the sequence track done, and he got up and he went to the toilet and pulled the kettle lead out and dumped the whole drum program. And then we had to plug the bleeder back in and start programming it while we remembered the riffs. And it was never the same. It was always the one that got away, you know, when the one that dumps is always the one that got away. The mix that you've not got is the one. And it was like that. So for us, ruined right from the word go because we'd lost the one and we had to put up with this rewritten drum track. But no, I mean, you never do you? You know, I mean, I'm fucking sick to death of Blue Mondays, to be honest. Every time it starts off, I go like, oh, fuck. It's like Wild Thing for the Trogs. You know, and yet people love it. And I always say to Bernard when we play, well, why don't we leave it off? And, you know, he's always going, oh, I'm fucking sick of Blue Monday, it drives me mad. But we'll leave it out then. Can't do that. The people won't like it. Which is about the only time he thinks of the people mind, but you know, so you get in that position. I mean, when I play, I use a remix of Blue Monday. I don't know if you want to hear it. That I like, well, for obvious reasons. It's a lot different. Are we up? Yep. Takes a while to load, scares you and stuff. How does it feel? Yeah, so I mean, a kid did that as a remix, sent it to us to OK, and it didn't come out. It's never come out, you see, so I'm the only one that's got it, and it makes me really happy. He says, oh, give me that dead fast one. I went, no. It's just mine.
Hi.
All right.
Bit of a fan question. I used to buy your 12-inch releases in the 80s, and I loved your bass sound. I'd buy like True Faith or Bizarre Love Triangle because I wanted to hear more of the song and in particular your bass. So I'd race out, get the 12-inch, bring it home, throw it on, listen, wait, no bass.
So was I.
Yeah. Was this like the compromise that you were talking about earlier? Or?
No, I used to go fucking mad about it.
Right.
Call them every Shep Pettibone was a complete, absolute tosser in my eyes, and everybody else was. I mean, the thing is that I think in that, as I was saying before, there was a swing towards electric instruments. They didn't want any acoustic instruments, so when they did a remix, it was electronic. And of course, as a bass player, I hated it. And I used to say to Bernard, well, why would you feel if they left your vocal off? And he, well, they don't though, do they?
Nice. Okay, yeah, well, that was a real disappointment to me. And I've been wanting to ask you that question for 20 years.
As much as a disappointment as it was to me. Cool. But I mean, it's funny now because it's now changed that now they use the bass loads. Sometimes in a remix, they'll use, you know, a lot of bass that we didn't use on the track, which is one of the nice things about remix these days with all the tracks you get on computers. In the old, it sounds so old, don't it? In the old days, 24 tracks, you really had to compromise with what you put down. So when you did a remix, there was limited things nowadays because you've got limitless tracks. You know, remixes have a lot more to play with, which is quite interesting. But I mean, you know, they still make mistakes. I mean, I hated what Stuart Price did on the last record of New Orders. I hated the mixes that he did for us. And I was really looking forward to the remixes. When they did the remixes, it came back with no bass on. Really, really limited amount of bass. So what I did was I went down, when I found out what they'd done, the record company had sent the parts of Stuart Price's mix out to be remixed and not the parts of New Orders. And I went fucking berserk. And then fucking blow me down to didn't do it on the next record as well.
Right.
So you have to, you know, we still...
It's so peculiar because it is obviously, to my mind anyway, the really unique thing about the sound of the music over, you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, I agree with you. You're preaching to the converted here, mate. You know what I mean?
But can I ask you a second question in relation to that, though? Because it happens to me a lot if I play the music and someone goes like, oh, yeah, it sounds like the Cure bass lines.
Well, ironically, the people ripping you off never really bothered me. What really bothered me about the Cure was when I saw the guy and he was playing like me which actually annoyed me more than him sounding like me, if that makes any sense.
Okay, gotcha.
I thought, you bastard, you know. But I mean, I sort of, I don't mind people ripping you off, because when I start writing, or when we start writing, we generally try and rip somebody off. You know, oh, let's do a Kraftwerk one. Let's rip Kraftwerk off. And I think the skill in it and the art in it is when you finish, it doesn't sound like Kraftwerk. But, you know, you've used it as a step. I mean, we got sued by John Denver for a track called Run, that he said sounded like Leaving on a Jet Plane. And I have yet to be, if anybody can play me that track and then play me, and I've done it, it does not sound to me like Leaving on a Jet Plane. But they have these people called musicologists that analyse it and then decide whether it's there, and that's a legal decision. So we had an American musicologist for John Denver. It seems John Denver employs somebody to listen to all music to see if anyone's ripping him off, like he's not got enough money or didn't have enough money at that point anyway. And they found us. And the musicologist said, you know, it sounds like John Denver, 8 notes out of 12. Somehow they use it to do it. It's, you know, it sounds like... So we thought, we'll get an English musicologist, and he'll prove that it doesn't sound like... And he did it as well. He said, yeah, it does. And we had to give John Denver 20%. So, you know, I mean, it does happen, but we don't do it. New Order, as a band, our stand is that if people rip you off, and, you know, there have been bands like The Cure where my mother has even said to me, that sounds like you are, Peter. You know, The Walk and In Between Days and stuff like that. But, I mean, you know, I take it as a compliment. I'm not, maybe it's something you save for your retirement.
Actually, I don't know if Mike can ask one more thing. Are you actually... are involved in the soundtrack for the new film? Will you be... Yeah,
we got the footage last week, actually, yeah. So we are doing it, yeah. I don't think there's not a lot of time in it, but because the film, to set the period, uses a lot of period music from 76, 77, 78, so they don't need, you know, so it's not going to be like a soundtrack album. There's going to be some of it, but not, you know, not a great deal.
G'day. I was just wondering how many basses you've got, and if you've got like a favourite or anything?
I don't really, I never really got into collecting guitars, and I never really, to me, it was just a means to an end, really. I used one bass guitar on every New Order LP, which is a BB 1200S Yamaha. And I've done it, and I've never found anything that for me sounds better than that. So I have one of those. I waited 6 years to get another, and I had 2 then, so I had the spare. And then about 6 months ago, I'd never seen another one ever. And 6 months ago, I was doing a gig in Toronto, and this kid brought one up for me to sign that he'd just bought, and I took it off him and won't give it him back. Give him $1,000 for it. got the guy to show him the door. No, I didn't. I swapped him one, actually. But so no, I used the BB 1200S for studio. Live, I saw, I can't remember what group it was. I think it was The Alarm. And they used a Gibson Ebo 2, which is a semi-acoustic bass, and I really like the look of it. And it's one of the only guitars that I've actually liked the look of. So I thought, oh, I'd like that. And I got one, and it was terrible because it was medium scale. It was impossible to tune. It was really unreliable. It was just crap guitar. And I got a guy in Cornwall called Chris Eccleshall to build me a copy using Yamaha electrics and a Yamaha. I prefer, because I've got very small hands, I prefer a small neck, narrow neck, so I can't use Fenders or anything like that, Rickenbackers. I like a Yamaha neck, so he ripped off a Yamaha neck straight through long scale with Yamaha electrics done as a semi-acoustic, which is the one that I play, hot ones that I play live. And he sold a lot of them. I was quite surprised. He sold 276 of those guitars, which he calls the Peter Hook bass guitar, which I was quite pleased about that. I like that. Don't get any money off it, though, but I told you I'm shit at business. Fucking. Anybody else? Can I go home now?
Well, maybe that is enough for now. Thank you very much, Peter.